Well, good afternoon, everybody. While it is a beautiful day in Hampton Roads right now with lots of blue sky and decent temperatures, severe weather season will be here before we know it. And the spring months are when we typically see some of our most active weather in terms of severe weather. Tornadoes, wind threat, hail threat, things like that. To better inform you as to what is a good storm report and what's a bad storm report and what you should be looking for if you do encounter severe weather, we've teamed up with the National Weather Service in Wakefield. They're the ones who work with us to issue warnings, watches, and advisories year-round, but especially during severe weather season. They're the ones who are issuing the severe thunderstorm warnings, the tornado warnings that we then broadcast to you on your television or you may get through our WAVY TV mobile app and our Super Dopper 10 mobile app. So we're going to let them talk a little bit about what the different types of severe weather that you should report are and shouldn't report. It's part of their Skywarn spotter training. And now this is going to be kind of a condensed version, but if you'd like to learn more about the Skywarn spotter program, you can visit their website at National Weather Service Wakefield. They've got some classes coming up, things like that, and you can check out their classes in full. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Mike of the National Weather Service and let him begin today's lesson.
Good day, everyone. This is Mike Montefusco, meteorologist with the National Weather Service office here in Wakefield, Virginia, and this is Skywarn Express. We've come together with some broadcast and emergency management professionals across our area to give you the basic weather information you need to know to report severe weather in the event of an emergency. Let's go ahead and get started. So who are National Weather Service Storm Spotters? Realistically, our spotters are you, our volunteers out there in the community who are reporting real time what they're seeing and what they're experiencing to us on the National Weather Service. That information that we receive from our spotters and from volunteers like you is crucial for us to issue timely and accurate warnings. Spotters help us do our jobs better during hazardous weather. So what we see in real time on satellite and on radar is what you see there on the left in that image. What you see in real time is what you see there on the right. It might be in the form of a tornado or a thunderstorm moving through town or floodwaters moving through your area. But that ground truth, what you're actually seeing in real time, is what we need to keep our communities safe. So that real-time verification adds credibility, enhances public response, and improves warning accuracy. If I told you that a warning was coming because of what I was seeing on the radar, that's important enough, and that's certainly something that you need to take seriously. But if I tell you that your friends and neighbors in communities next to you, in your surrounding areas, are seeing this right now, that adds that little extra impetus to get to safety, to make sure you're safe, to make sure your family is safe. And that's what we need from you. Now, our radar here at our office here in Wakefield and across the country in offices like ours are doing exactly what you see here. They're rotating around and they are putting out sound pulses into the atmosphere. It's just above ground level and it's putting out those sound pulses. And what those sound pulses are doing is it's going through our cloud and surveying what's actually going on, and those sound pulses will bounce off of raindrops and reflect back to the radar. Now what you're seeing is the reflectivity. The reflectivity that you see on the evening news or when you're watching on your phones, that's going to be the reflectivity data. That's what we're used to usually seeing during a weather report or when we start to figure out, is it going to rain today? That is the amount of the signal that's returning. And the amount of that signal is going to be expressed in the colors that you're seeing. Those lighter greens, that's going to mean lower reflectivity, so lighter rainfall. When you get into those hotter colors, those yellows, those oranges, those reds, even purples, that's going to be a large amount of reflectivity. We call that a high reflectivity. So that means there's a lot of something that's being reflected back to the radar. Now that could be ice, that could be very, very heavy rainfall, it could be debris, but that's going to be what's actually being reflected back towards our radar. And as meteorologists, it's our job to tell you what's actually within that sample that's being reflected back. Now, as far as velocity data, that goes into which way the air is moving, and that's where the Doppler effect comes into play. Now, you hear the Doppler effect all the time in the respect of, Doppler and then a number. Well, the Doppler effect is really just the ability for us to determine which way air is moving when push comes to shove. So the best example for that I like to relay to people is if you're driving down the road, or if you're in a vehicle and you just hear a horn or an emergency vehicle or a train coming. It's going to sound differently, whatever that is, in front of you versus behind you. So if you hear a train siren, it's going to sound differently in front of you than behind you. Same with an emergency siren or anything of the like. It's going to sound differently in front of you than it is as it's passing you. And that difference is the Doppler effect. And that's the radar's ability, in this case, to determine which direction the air is moving. That's critical when it comes to determining where thunderstorm outflow is, tornadic circulations, potential tornadic circulations, very large outflows of wind that can very quickly turn into strong winds within a thunderstorm. So there are significant limitations, though, with respect to what the radar can do for us, and that is where our spotters come into play. Where it comes to location A, if you were a spotter in location A, you're going to be able to see a lot of those low-level details within our thunderstorms. And our range for the lowest levels of our radar go outwards of 150 miles plus. However, because of the curvature of the Earth, the farther and farther away you go away from our radar, the higher that radar beam is going to go up into the sky. From location B, you're going to miss a lot of those low-level details. And as a result of that, I'm going to need, as a meteorologist on my end of things here at the National Weather Service, I'm going to need to use either another radar that's adjacent to it or closer to that storm, or I'm going to have to substitute in some additional information, and that comes from our spotters. So spotters help us to save lives. So next we look at the outlook categories. This is from our colleagues at the Storm Prediction Center, and you will use this, you will see this used days ahead of time, and to talk about the potential for severe weather, be it a day ahead, 2 days ahead, maybe 3 or 4 days ahead. And we'll talk in these categories of 1 through 5, the amount of severe weather that's anticipated, be it in scale or severity. And again, remember that severe storms don't really care what category that they're in. Severe weather is going to be a threat regardless of what the numbers are above. We just use this as a way to kind of categorize the ingredients and what's available to the storms and what kind of danger is there in that scenario. So certainly having a plan, being ready to take shelter immediately, and being weather ready are always important. And this is why we suggest that folks take a full Skywarn class, because we give you a full way to do that. But in general, if you look at graphics that we would put out, this would be a good example of something that would be put out through our social media feed, and you would see the risk on the left there and forecasted rainfall there on the right. And we would delineate the timing for severe weather, the threats that would be presented, and the timing that would be presented. And we try to give you the information you need to make decisions for whatever is going on in your world, be it your plans or what to expect as the storms come through. In terms of severe weather definitions, really there are set criteria for these things, and that is very important to understand. There is a severe thunderstorm criteria. When that warning or watch is issued, we are looking for 1 inch hail in diameter, that's about the size of a quarter in diameter, or 58 mile per hour wind gusts. That is generally what's accepted to produce damaging winds in terms of downed trees, downed power lines, things of that nature. We don't issue warnings for lightning. By its nature, certainly we would be issuing warnings for every thunderstorm, and we don't want that. Nobody wants that. And that's something that we certainly try to be on guard for, is warning for every thunderstorm. We don't want to do that. But really, when you look at a watch, this is going to be, again, the watch phase is when the ingredients are potentially coming together for thunderstorms to become strong to severe. So this is when conditions are favorable for that to occur, and this is issued through the Storm Prediction Center out in Oklahoma. They'll consult with us, and they'll issue something like this. This is from 2019. You'll notice it's a larger area. basically from the eastern shore down into the Carolinas, and this is going to be for a larger area. So we'll talk about hail potential, wind potential, lightning in there as well, and we'll talk about the timing with respect to this watch. It can generally be for 2 to 4, maybe even 6 hours at a time for the potential for severe weather to occur. Now, when a warning is issued, that's going to be by our local office. For everybody here across central and eastern Virginia, the northern neck of Maryland and Virginia, and northeast North Carolina, that's going to be done by our office here in Wakefield. And we issue for weather that is imminent or occurring with respect to severe thunderstorms. And that warning polygon is going to be based on the area of highest threat. Now, for storms that don't quite meet that severe thunderstorm criteria that I discussed, we have what's called a special weather statement. And these are for, again, those strong thunderstorms that may or may not strengthen to severe levels, but will nonetheless be notable. That could be small hail or frequent lightning. Storms that create frequent lightning or produce frequent lightning, we will handle them with this product, the special weather statement. Wind gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour are also things of that nature. Now, these are going to be issued with graphics like this that you'll see on our social media feeds as well, and we'll again get into the potential for damaging winds in this area, or the potential for frequent lightning or small hail, whatever the threat is presented. And we'll very quickly talk about the timetable as well. You'll also see the valid time in there and the areas that are being impacted. This is a good time to think about what you do when you receive warnings. When you get that information, number one, how do you receive it? There's multiple ways of receiving warnings is the best way and the most ideal way to make sure you have the latest information. Now, this is certainly a good time to put in a quick plug for our NOAA All Hazards Weather Radio. This is really the voice of the National Weather Service. I call it the smoke alarm for weather. Any warning that is issued, that's going to go directly to that radio, as long as it's programmed for your jurisdiction. That's going to go off within 10 to 15 seconds and give you the information that you need to keep you and your family safe. Beyond that, we have our friends in the media. We have our areas that have sirens or have that public alert mechanism that's available. We have that available. And also we have WIA alarms. Those are messages that get relayed to our phones directly through our mobile providers. And that's going to give you the latest information. Again, provided that you are in that area. It's triangulated to your location. So if you're from a location A and you're in location B, that warning is going to be relayed to you based upon your location, not location B, rather than where you live. So let's get into some thunderstorm meteorology. As air becomes heated by the sun, we start to get the air heated up, and as the air gets heated up, it begins to rise. So think of warming some water on the stove, or putting some hot air into a balloon. That warm air, hot air, makes it want to climb. So as air is heated, it becomes lighter and rises. If there's enough moisture present in the atmosphere, the updraft can develop into a towering cumulus cloud. And that's, as the name implies, just a wall of clouds that starts to get elongated and stretched in the vertical direction. And lastly, we need a source of lift. The source of lift is going to be an agent that kickstarts that process, that really gets that updraft into gear. So that could be a front, it could be a sea breeze boundary. So basically when cooler air comes in from the ocean or from the bay on a warm summer afternoon, that can also be basically a localized front that moves through. So things like that can kickstart that updraft process. So when we have a mature thunderstorm, we have a fully developed relationship between the updraft and the downdraft region. So this updraft is going to continue upwards until it gets to the top of our storm. When we get to the top of our storm, we have what's called the equilibrium level, or EL for short, which is simply a part of the storm where instability starts to go away. So our ingredients are moisture, instability, and lift. When our instability goes away, all of this updraft starts to make its way back down to the ground. It goes into the downdraft region, where what goes up must come down. You'll notice that we have a little pink line here that kind of delineates the freezing line. So where 0 Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit exists within our thunderstorm. You'll notice in this part of the storm, in the updraft portion of the storm, it's buckled upwards. That's for the warmer air that's displacing that line upwards, farther up into our storm. In the downdraft section, it's buckled downward because we have rain-cooled air coming down and displacing it downward, groundward. All of our rain, all of our wind is going to be in the downdraft area. So in the updraft area, you'll notice a brighter sky. We call this the rain-free base. That's where the air is going up into our storm. Think about the storm breathing in or taking air in. In the downdraft section, it's going to be coming out. This is the storm breathing out, or putting storm flow air out towards the ground. Types of thunderstorms, we have the single cell, and this goes from increasing levels of severity, from single cell all the way up to the supercell. So basically from the single cell to the multi-cell, which can be several storms in different levels of development, to the squall line, to the supercell. The squall line is the most frequent purveyor of severe weather here in the mid-Atlantic region, and it will typically be along a cold front coming through. And this is a particularly long-lived and broad area of squall line that came through the southeast. This is more than 10 years old now, but it's a very good example where we have a very strong cold front moving across the mid-Atlantic into the Carolinas, producing some very large thunderstorms, producing a bunch of wind. So with the squall line, the primary threat is damaging winds, and it's going to be often accompanied by this. This is the shelf cloud. It's a cigar-shaped cloud on the leading edge of our thunderstorms. All the heavy wind that comes out of this thunderstorm is going to come from underneath this shelf. So basically think about like a bookshelf or a large shelf that you would have in your home. It's the same type of orientation where it's more horizontal at the front of our storm. And the worst is going to be first with this. You're going to get the heaviest rain, the heaviest wind, which would then gradually diminish in intensity as the storm moves through. So again, as our storm motion moves from, in this case, the left to the right, the gust front, which is right here, that's going to be the initial arrival of our thunderstorm. So as the storm comes through, as we think about a thunderstorm coming through, what do we think of? We think of that cool burst of wind that announces the thunderstorm's arrival. That is the passage of the gust front that is pushing that cold, rain-cooled air out of our thunderstorm towards you. And that is where all of that rain-cooled air and heavy rain comes out of our thunderstorm. Now with supercells, it's a little bit different because we have a little bit more in the way of shear that's available. We have this updraft because of the shear and the significant shear that is present. We have a significant amount of shear that's going up into our thunderstorm. And because of that, supercells almost always present some level of severe weather when they are present. In terms of hail, as we get moisture streamed into our thunderstorm and wafted, typically the stronger the updraft, the bigger the hail. So we're going to want to get this moisture pushed into our thunderstorm. And typically, locally, our period of hail is going to be as we get into the really early portions of the spring, so from March into maybe late April, early May. That's typically our peak time for large hail across the mid-Atlantic, as it's still to some degree cold in the mid and upper levels. As you get later on into the spring and summer, it's just too warm everywhere to get much in the way of large hail too often, unless you get some really, really strong and big thunderstorms that move through. Rotating updraft can certainly produce some very large hail. Once again, our tornadic circulation here. Here is the largest hailstone from WAVY in South Dakota back in 2010. This has been equaled over the years in South America a couple years back, but this is still the largest here in the continental United States. Tail of the tape on this guy, a little over 18.5 inches circumference, 8 inches in diameter, and just under 2 pounds. Fortunately, no significant injuries with this, but there was quite a bit of damage, as you can probably imagine from this particular hailstone. Across the mid-Atlantic region, certainly our most frequent severe weather is from damaging winds. Straight line winds, when you hear that term, that tells you that you have damaging wind that isn't associated with tornadic circulation. So it's the result of an outflow from a thunderstorm due to downbursts or the squall line or gust fronts. So basically it's just wind coming out of our thunderstorm that is moving towards the ground. And if you kind of think about pouring a bottle of water onto a table or a surface, it's going to hit on the ground and then it's going to diffuse outward. Kind of as a bottle of water hitting a table would run off. So too would wind. It's going to diffuse outward and it's going to make damage as it diffuses outward and spreads outward. So while the worst damage will be in a small area, generally less than 5 miles in diameter, it can have winds that mimic EF0, EF1 tornado damage, and we'll talk about the Fujita scale in just a moment. But you can get tornadic looking damage from a downburst. So just saying that it is a downburst isn't really diminishing the quality of the damage that you're seeing. It's just saying that it doesn't come from a tornado. So the squall line itself moves through very, very quickly in a lot of cases and is going to use a very large area. We call this a divergent wind path, which is to say it goes over a large area. So if you see the gust front advancing too far ahead, you can kind of see this bluish line getting ahead of our thunderstorms. When that happens, our thunderstorms typically weaken pretty quickly because it's losing what we call its forcing, or the thing that's pushing it along. The biggest indicator of severe winds is what we call the bow echo. So these storms are moving from southwest to northeast. And kind of think about a bow, like if you're pulling back a bow to shoot a bow and arrow, you can kind of say at the apex of that bow is when you're going to have the strongest wind. That's when you're most likely to have the strongest winds in this particular area at the apex of this bow, because that's where the strongest winds will generally set up. With respect to flooding, we have flood warnings and flood watches, similar to tornadoes and severe thunderstorms. The watch is when flooding is possible. The ingredients are coming together to produce flooding. We say to keep an eye on your radio or television, watch our website, and be ready to move to higher ground. When we get into a flood warning situation, that is flooding is ongoing or is about to occur. And it is your heads up that some roads will become flooded. So we say to move to higher ground and absolutely do not drive through flooded roadways. We say turn around, don't drown for that reason. We don't want you to be stranded. We don't want to put anybody else's life into danger either. So we say turn around, don't drown. Now this is the enhanced Fujita scale. This is to get a little bit more in tune with the severity of the damage itself rather than trying to quantify the wind itself, because we've found that kind of getting into quantifying the wind itself is a little bit more abstract, whereas trying to quantify the damage is something that we can do very quickly after the fact within a survey. So from EF0, that is the lowest, if you will, damage level from 65 to 85 mile per hour winds, all the way up to EF4 and EF5. That will typically go into more extreme or massive, incredible damage. And you can see the damage indicators there. Now, the damage indicators are from our survey team, and we can quantify the damage using a bunch of indicators, and there are hundreds upon hundreds of them that we use to quantify the damage and the wind that could create them. And that is why our storm survey process is as important as it is to quantify the damage that you see and that everybody will be able to look at when a tornado moves through town. Now, as we talked about the shelf cloud with respect to straight line winds, we talk about a wall cloud as it pertains to tornadic winds. Now, the wall cloud is an isolated lowering of the cloud base, typically at the base of the updraft, and that updraft is ingesting rain-cooled air from our shelf cloud. And as a result of that, it's going to be pointing towards the downdraft region. So you're going to be looking for rotation, which is going to imply that tornadic circulation, or at least that wall cloud circulation. When you see updraft plus rotation, we say to watch out for a tornado. So put this in motion really quickly. This is a little bit accelerated to kind of get the effects for you so you can kind of see them a little bit clearer. But this is from a couple of years ago in the Ohio Valley. And again, you can very clearly see the rotation in here. The feeder coming in from the right side, and as this circulation moves on through, again, as the wall cloud is rotating, so is that updraft. So for the shelf versus the wall cloud, we're sloping away from precipitation. We're indicating downdraft or outflow. With wall clouds, we're sloping towards the precipitation, and we're indicating updraft or inflow. And lastly, with squall lines, we can get tornadoes within those squall lines. And unfortunately, those are rain wrapped in a lot of cases. And because of that, they are obscured by the rain that's going on within that line, and they're going to be very, very difficult to spot. So they can basically be right on top of the rain that's coming through and can be very, very difficult to really warn on, much beyond a couple of minutes at the very, very most. And typically it can be less than that because our tornadoes really are basically not visible until they're moving through. So again, when you see the Weather Service warning, when you see heads up to these types of thunderstorms, you may not be able to visibly pick them up, but if that warning is out there, respect that warning that's out there because it's there, because either our radar is giving us good indications that it's present, or your friends and neighbors in the surrounding areas have had that particular storm move through. So in terms of uncertainty when spotting, if you don't know exactly what it is that you're looking at, go ahead and report it. Report what you see, give specific details. We live here too, and we know the complications that come with weather spotting. So just give us the information that you have and report it, and we'll take it from there. Now, in terms of the basics, identify yourself as a spotter. We don't distribute identification numbers or anything like that, so you just identify yourself as a spotter. Say you're 5 miles west of the location. Try to say, in particular, your crossroads. So a major street and where you're located is great. If you have latitude, longitude information, that's wonderful, but it's certainly not required. Lastly, if you have something where you're really watching a storm for a long period of time, try to keep a fairly decent account of the end time or start and end time, if at all possible. For the event itself, hail, thunderstorm damage to trees, anything to trees or power lines is damage. So that's a very important point. Any kind of damage that you see is worthy of reporting with respect to trees, power lines, things of that nature. Flooding, roads becoming impassable, funnel clouds, wall clouds, weather-related injuries. You don't need to report lightning because we do have lightning networks that are available out there. But certainly realize that if you report something significant, we'll probably want to contact you. This is a quick little hail indicator. These are kind of self-explanatory, so I'll kind of leave this here. But report the largest stone size. With respect to wind speed estimates are difficult, so just do the best you can. Realize that measured wind speeds are always going to take precedence because, of course, they do. That's going to be a more precise measurement than more anecdotal data. Do the best you can. Even professional meteorologists will tend to overestimate the wind, so just take that into account and report what you see. Now, this is a modified Beaufort scale here. And as you get into the damage of light structural damage, shingles getting blown off, tree damage getting done, that's the kind of thing that we need to have reported, if at all possible. And that's how we need to hear from you. Methods for reporting are here. I'm going to leave that. Go ahead and pause this if you'd like to go ahead and get this information put in. You can follow us on social media. Email us pictures if you can. But for time-sensitive things, go ahead and call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are always here. You'll be able to talk to an actual human being, and most often a meteorologist will be answering your call and talking with you directly. So that's it for our Skywarn Express. We hope you've enjoyed it. I would really like to take this opportunity to thank you for watching, and I would also like to invite you to a full Skywarn. We go into a lot more depth with all of the things that you've seen in this presentation today, and we do have a lot of fun at our Skywarn classes. They generally take 90 minutes to about 2 hours of your time, and I think they're very well worth your time to know more information about what to do in the event of severe weather. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this Skywarn Express, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Mike. We really appreciate you working with us to make sure our viewers know what you should and shouldn't report. And it won't be too long before we get some thunderstorms in our area. Something a lot of people have been commenting on Facebook and on social media during this was they want some snow. And we do appreciate those reports too. Haven't had a whole lot this year to report, have we? But we may, get through March with maybe a chance of snow here and there. And if we do get some, we really love to see your pictures, and we love to see the snowfall totals because they can vary significantly in just a couple miles. If you're right at the coast, it can be a lot less than if you're just a few miles inland thanks to that temperature difference. So that really helps us too understand what's going on in the weather. You can always send pictures to us via reportit@wavy.com. And if you'd like to learn more about the Skywarn Spotter program or just reporting severe weather in general, I just published a fresh weather blog on the WAVY weather blog. So check it out on wavy.com and learn more about severe weather. Hopefully we don't have any the next couple of months, but it seems like we always have at least 1 or 2 rounds of severe weather in our region. Hopefully this helps you know what to look for and report the next time severe weather hits. Have a great afternoon.